When you have your girls, you're never alone. You get together for coffee, maybe to work out, or just to laugh. We created Hey Girl, just for you. Can't wait for you to join us.
Hello and welcome to Hey Girl. I'm your girl, Kim with an E, and this is episode 47. Listen, if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. Hey Girl is a safe space where you can share your experience and be affirmed. Let's face it, life can be complex and sometimes overwhelming. That's why we believe in the power of conversation, because knowing you're not alone is what helps us get through. And I know I'm not alone today because you are here. So let me know that you're here by saying hello in the comments. And I don't have a co host today, but I am so thrilled to have my producer, Amanda, who's going to pop in and accompany me for a little bit so I don't have to be alone. And I want to let you guys know that wow, we are already in March. And so we are shifting to a whole new theme. As you know, the month of February was all about celebrating our history by looking at Black women and beauty. And I am just thrilled that the month of March gives us an opportunity to talk more about the amazing Black women that we know as we celebrate Women's History Month during the month of March. And this is the first of a month-long series with that focus. And as we focus on women's history, we're specifically going to be focusing on women in medicine and women in health related fields because I want to talk about our health this month as women, every aspect of our health, in fact. So I'm hoping that you're as excited as I am about this month's theme as we continue the conversation. And I know we have some friends out there who have come on. Tell me you're there, say hello, and happy Women's History Month to all of you out there. Oh, also, want to let you know that next week we will reignite the Hey Girl High Five. I know we haven't talked about the Hey Girl High Five in a while, but as you know, we are all about supporting minority owned businesses and particularly helping out our sisters, sister friends, and girlfriends who are doing amazing work. And as you know, our girl Natalie Ray has her own business, beautiful ethnic uh, clothing and jewelry that we have talked about before on this show. And I am so excited to let you guys know about something that Natalie Ray is doing this evening that I want you all to be a part of. Head over to the Thrifting Atlanta Facebook Live from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern. She is doing a special Natalie Ray featuring all of her great stuff. And we definitely want to support her. So if you're not able to find it on the Thrifting Atlanta Facebook page, just go to Natalie Ray's page. And you see it there on your screen. You can search her page and get the link to her special Facebook shopping experience this evening. I am so excited for all the things that Natalie is doing. And she's one of our Hey Girl partners that we feature on our high five list. So make sure you check that out. So, who is with me today? I'm going to try to see if I can get my comments up. You know, I sometimes am a little slow on my side because Wi-Fi is not always my friend, but let me know you're here and watching. And I want to just talk a little bit about Women's History Month. All right. So what even is that? And you know, it's so interesting because similar to Black History Month, I've had conversations with people who are like, you know, what's the point? Why is it necessary? And it absolutely is necessary, right? I mean, I've even had conversations with people who have said things like, you know, almost implying that there's like a unfairness in highlighting certain groups of people's history, isolating them in some way. And you know, obviously we could talk more about that, but let's just talk about the fact that unfortunately in our country there is not an equality of exposure and knowledge, passing on of knowledge of the things that different communities contribute to American society. obviously we have Black History Month because the history of Black people in this country is often not told. And same with women. And so there was actually a group out of California that brought this to the attention of their community first, and then it eventually caught on. So they had a Women's History Week, similar to Black History Month. It started out as a week, and that was back in 1978 that they organized the first Women's History emphasis. And then March 8th in particular, that's Monday, is International Women's History emphasis. And so this March 8th began to be the day that was isolated as, really the focus for women's history. And then in 1980, Jimmy Carter finally made the proclamation that there would be the National Women's History Week. And eventually, between 1988 and 1994, Congress passed additional resolutions that eventually led to a month-long focus on women's history. So Amanda, I'm hoping you're still with me. I'm not seeing many comments in the comment box, unless I'm just not seeing them on my side. But am I by myself today? What's going
You
on?
are not by yourself. We have 10 people watching, and nobody has said anything yet.
Oh, they're all quiet. Okay, they're just gonna let me talk
I can
talk to
start calling them by name because I see who's in there.
myself. You guys say hello in the comments. Don't leave me by myself. Um, so yeah, Amanda, I was just reading up on this whole women's history and how it came to be a thing, and it reminds me so much of the way Black History Month came about. But in addition to that, I was saying earlier how there's just really a deficit of education broadly about subjects such as Black history, but also women's history. And the national, there's a wait, hold on. National Women's History Museum actually did a study of the US K-12 social studies curriculum. And they basically confirmed that what our children are learning in school. Hey, Kieta. Hey, Laura. Finally, hello.
I was about to tell you.
What our children are being taught in school obviously is dictated by the K-12 curriculum. And they found that there was definitely a deficit. There was an overemphasis on male-oriented exceptional leadership, and an overemphasis on women's domestic roles, which just kind of proves the point that, if this is what we're teaching our children, then this is all they're going to know, basically. I even my daughter asked me this week, she was like, so when did Women's History Month become a thing? Like, I don't remember hearing about that.
I didn't even
I
know
mean, guys,
I didn't know there was a museum. I just looked it up.
there is, yeah, and they have a lot of good information because I wanted to also know, how it began, like who started the movement, right? Who was because somebody has to be the first to stand up and say, hey, this is important. Um, but yeah, the standards of our curriculum do not reflect the trends or ideals in girls' education that many of us have. There's um, of course, an increasing emphasis now for women and girls to embrace science and technology and engineering and mathematics. And, we really need to make sure that we're doing our part as parents to educate our kids and then also holding the school system accountable for what they're teaching our kids. Because clearly, if they don't see themselves reflected, then they're not going to assume they're not going to know that these things are possible for them, you know. Um, so I'm making it my mission this month to do what I can to contribute to our knowledge of our history. And this year, actually, they are extending an emphasis on women's right to vote. They said that there wasn't a lot of the women's suffrage centennial celebrations of 2020 got shut down, obviously for various reasons. I'm sure many because of COVID. So they are really trying to push this month as the Women's History Month theme, this idea of women, the rights for women to vote. And I think it's so perfect because we now have a woman who's a vice president, and there are two women in particular that I want to talk about very briefly, who I think are perfect examples of why this emphasis on the right to vote matters. One of them is Shirley Chisholm. First of all, she's the one who I want to highlight two women, but she's the one I want to talk about as being the shoulders upon which others have stood on, right? Shirley Chisholm was the first African American woman in Congress in 1968 and the first woman and African American to seek the nomination for president of the United States from one of the two major political parties. Her motto and title of her autobiography is Unbossed and Unbought, which illustrates her outspoken advocacy for women and minorities during her 7 terms in the US House of Representatives. And I love this quote that we have of hers, which is, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. Can somebody say amen to that? Right? I mean, really, I
Amen.
love that. I love it. I love that her attitude. I love her spunk and the fact that she was bold enough in 1968 to run for president. I mean, like that's an impossible task for a woman in 2021. But I can only imagine the barriers that she faced. In fact, what I was reading talked about, how she was blocked at every turn, and it was just amazing that she even got as far as she did in her campaign, considering the barriers that she had to overcome. And so I love that idea of, follow in her footsteps and not wait for it to come, right? Just pull up a folding chair and make it happen.
And we're getting some comments. Kieti says, as women, we support every other agenda but our own. Kimberly,
Yeah.
Joy Morgan, Laura Colson, and Kieti all said amen, amen, amen.
Yes. I mean, come on. Thank you, Hallelujah Choir, the Amen Choir. I appreciate that. Appreciate you being there because absolutely, I think that we as women do tend to put ourselves second very often and allow others in our lives, the men in our lives, our children. We push them to the front and to the detriment sometimes of our own success and progress. And so, on the shoulders of Shirley Chisholm is the present woman of power in the political scene whom I love. And it's just, it warms my heart because she's only a few months younger than I am. We were born the same year. Stacey Abrams. And she's actually a schoolmate of one of our co-hosts, Tanya Laughinghouse. They both went to Spelman. And of course, Stacey Abrams has been an absolute force lately with the work that she has been doing to fight voter suppression in Georgia. And of course, her name is synonymous with voting accessibility and turnout. She made history by becoming the first woman and first African American woman to hold positions in state and national politics. And she is now one of the most prominent African American female politicians in the United States. And she says, we will all at some point encounter hurdles, but on the other side is the capacity to own opportunity and tell our own story. And I love that because I feel like putting her alongside of Shirley Chisholm just shows what's possible. When you pull up that folding chair to the table, you can make it happen. We as women can make it happen one way or another. And so, in spite of the hurdles that we encounter, we just have to keep pushing and to hold up these examples for all of us, to inspire all of us to whatever area we are working in, whatever our expertise is, to use them as examples to do the most. Do the most. All right, so that's my women's history spill for today. I'm going to give y'all a quiz next week and see if you remember any of those things. So get ready. There, that's the teacher in me coming out. Get ready for the pop quiz next week. But I'm just so excited today to introduce you to our guest because speaking of women who do amazing things, Kimberly Joy Morgan is one of those. And as I said, our emphasis this month is on our health and taking care of ourselves. And so Kimberly Joy is Yahweh's daughter, a wife, a mother, a sister, and a friend who is also a published author, certified health coach, and professional union actress. I mean, with highest honors in 1999 and worked for a time in management consulting for Ernst& Young. Now, she is the founder and CEO of Do All Things with Joy, through which she helps people to see the benefit of healthy living so they can have the energy to pursue their goals and approach life with passion and purpose. I love that. So please join me as we welcome the very lovely Kimberly Joy Morgan, everyone. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I am so happy to have you. I love all the things that you're doing. I think that video just says it all. It just shows who you are in every sense of the word. And I just feel I feel inspired already. Just the little time that I've spent, I'm excited to hear more about what you do.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here and to share for sure.
Awesome. Okay, so we're talking about Women's History Month, and I've been sharing all the things. I'm curious to know if there's a historic figure, female figure, that inspires you. Is there someone whose shoulders you see yourself standing on?
You know, I love all of the historic people that we know of, like, Sojourner Truth and Harriet
Yeah.
Tubman, and the stories that inspire us of their grit and their, tenacity to not give up and to get to where they need to be. But I honestly am a person who really loves people that are just in my life that I have had personal connection with. So,
Absolutely.
I call out my mother and my auntie Roz and my aunt
Oh, yeah.
Dorothy and these women that, lead everyday lives, but have just shown me how to be a great mother, how to have the business that I have, how to age gracefully. The people that I'm speaking of are in their 80s and late 70s. And for me, I know they've seen so much. And so my admiration goes really to those women in particular. And while I still can give reverence and honor to all of the women that we know from the past, from our Coretta Scott Kings and, all of the Angela Davis and all of that, it's still the individuals who have really impacted and shaped my life.
Absolutely. I amen to that. I love everything that you just said because it is very easy to put these women that we hear about in the history books on a pedestal and look up to them, but they're at such a distance, right? Yes, they absolutely inspire us, and we should definitely follow their history, their story, and share it with our own children. But we cannot overlook the women in our own lives who are right there next to us, guiding us through every step of our lives and leaving their own legacy, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about Do All Things with Joy and what exactly that is and what exactly you do.
Excellent. All right. So Do All Things with Joy. Most people think that it means, because my middle name is Joy. I'm Kimberly Joy Morgan. I was born Kimberly Joy Gray. And so people think, oh, that means everything that you do with the joy of, working with Kimberly in whatever capacity. But that's really not it. It's really the joy of the Lord. I really want people to do all things, for his glory, and knowing that health and wellness for me was birthed out of pain, really from I had something called C. difficile that came from taking an antibiotic, and it cleared out my good and bad bacteria. And so I was a person who really always was into exercise, and at UNC Chapel Hill I was probably one of the only Black women that was found in the SRC honor, which is our Student Recreation Center, lifting weights a regular basis. And it was in that space that I loved always health and wellness, but I really didn't understand eating. And when I was forced to change my eating habits because I didn't want to live on medication for the rest of my life, I found a joy that was unexplainable because I had to go to God. And I said, because most of the doctors were telling me, oh, you got to have this medication, and this is just kind of where you are at 29 years old, and this is going to be the rest of your life. And I said, Father, this cannot be where I spend the rest of my days popping pills, and I want your joy to fill me, because it became a very dark time for me. But I was able to really dig into his word and study what he said about how to eat, and then started looking at science and kind of putting the two together. And so from there, my health coaching and life coaching career kind of expanded. And my business did not start off with the name Do All Things with Joy, but it just evolved into that, into realizing that joy that I have. And it was kind of, like I said, a play on my name, but yet it really is about you finding the joy of the Lord for your life.
Wow. So you had a health crisis yourself and discovered how to get around using medicine, the prescription medication or what have you that was being offered. And then out of that experience grew the coaching and helping others to do the same. And
Correct.
so what did you discover about your condition, and what kinds of things would be more beneficial for you than the medicines that were being suggested?
Okay, so as I was saying with C. difficile, basically it's the good bacteria and the bad bacteria in your microbiome, which consists, your microbiome is all over your body. I mean, your skin has its own microbiome, and those are just little organisms that really can be either good or bad. It's the microbes of our body. And, you can find microorganisms in the ocean, in the soil, all around us, really. But our gut has to have healthy microorganisms. And that microbiome is just like any biome, which is a life structure, that we have. If the earth biome becomes imbalanced, we have, issues with the animals dying off or anything like that. So the same thing happens to our bodies. So when that happened to me, it was, now you have to rebuild your microbiome and figure out how to create healthy bacteria. And in 2007, when this was discovered, we didn't have all of the bells and whistles that we have today with gluten-free living and understanding sugar and the implications, and paleo and keto. And we didn't have Pinterest, and we didn't have, it wasn't there. So I remember discovering that, and they had to give me an antibiotic to kill the bad bacteria. But then that also disrupts the microbiome. And so I remember going back to them and saying, oh, it's been about 2 weeks. And I don't want to be too graphic on the show, but I mean, basically your bowel movements are not normal. So let's just put it that way. So you're in the space of, well, when is this going to be normal again? And they were like, well, it's going to take some time. You might need to take some probiotics and eat yogurt. I said, okay, well, and at that time I was like, you mean Yoplait yogurt? Or what are we talking about? And I just didn't know. I didn't have the knowledge. And they were like, well, maybe something a little bit stronger. You can go to your health food store, but no one gave me any real clear pathway to healing. So
I don't want to interrupt you, but I feel like there's such a deficit with modern medicine and holistic practices, which really should be more in sync, right?
Yes.
They're always like, oh yeah, I don't know about that health stuff. You have to go to to your local health food store. And I'm just like, but you're a health professional.
Yes.
Should you know a little bit about these things? Yeah.
Yeah. But that's a whole nother topic, and we could come in and have a show. But it's the part of big pharma and big ag, and the fact that they don't really want you to be well, because that's not where the money rests and lies. So that's why they have health coaches, because what happens is when your doctor says your A1C numbers are out of whack, or say something that you need your cholesterol lowered, and you don't know how to do that, and they're not willing to really walk you through and talk to you. Now, functional medicine doctors will, so it's good to find a great functional medicine doctor, but that's where you can work hand in hand with a health coach like myself to give you those natural ways to do it. But going a little bit back, I just realized I needed to go in and get educated. If they weren't going to educate me, I had to educate myself and help them help myself to understand, what do I do? So I started off really with finding a good like kind of naturopath doctor that I could talk to. And he really helped me understand some of the foods that were probably triggering. So I started taking out inflammatory foods, especially gluten for me. And then from there, kept working with other things and then adding in probiotic foods, kimchi and sauerkraut. I really stayed away from dairy though, because dairy created mucus. So it was a learning process. This didn't happen all overnight, but that was really how I got into understanding health and wellness. And as my digestive system started to heal and I added bone broth, there was just a year by year, month by month, different things that I would put in and pull out, and really started to realize that my microbiome was shifting and changing. And so that was kind of the early years. And then now step it up to 2021, 2000, it was, discovering IgG and IgE blood testing and finding out what foods I'm actually allergic to and taking those out. And so it's another step of healing. So it's always the evolution of what's going on, cutting edge with health and wellness from a holistic standpoint that I am researching and studying.
Wow, that is so interesting. So how long after you started your journey to your own better health did you decide that you wanted to shift over and start helping others with this?
Well, it was actually on accident. I was a group fitness instructor. I had just had children. I just had my first son when this happened. So honestly, I was pretty nervous because the C. diff happened while I was breastfeeding him, right? So as I had moved into a new career, I left acting for a while when I had my son, and I got pregnant with another. And so what happened? I started posting my food on social media as I was shifting, and people were like, wow, what are you eating? That looks really good. Because one thing people know, I don't like nasty food. I love to eat healthy, but it has to taste good. And I don't want to sit there and dread. I didn't want to eat cardboard. I was like, there has to be a better way. And so as I started finding new recipes and experimenting with new vegetables and different types of, complex carbohydrates that weren't as popular then as they are now, it was, people were like, wow, what are you doing? And so I started to just kind of help people, and it evolved from there into one client here and one client there. And then it was, I probably need to go back to school and get some formal training in what I'm doing. And so that was pretty much from 2007 to where we are now, how my career evolved.
Yeah, that is great. I can imagine though that, well, I guess this is why you're coaching, because I imagine that there's not a one size fit all sort of way to do this, right?
No,
It's like
there isn't.
so specific to the individual. Yeah.
Yeah, one person's food is another person's poison. And so that's what I always tell people, is that you're not going to come to me and I'm going to give you a cookie cutter flyer that everyone else receives. Now there are some standards, like as far as inflammatory foods that we may all, that can be higher inflammatory for everyone. So yes, that type of education and information. But as far as if you come to me as a client, and let's say Laura comes to me, I know she's in the comments here. If she comes to me as a client, guess what's going to happen? I am going to provide you with totally different information. And I also say it's not just about the food that you put in your mouth. It has to do with something, that's what I call secondary food. All right. So it has to do with like what we say in primary food, which are your relationships, your career, your spirituality, and your physical activity. And if those things are out of balance and every person has something different going on in their lives in that area, then guess what? You're going to either really thrive and put great secondary food in your mouth, or if something's way out of balance, you're going to start putting negative secondary food in your mouth because of that. And so you really have to work on all areas.
So when you're coaching your clients, are you doing like some counseling as well, like for the other aspects of their lives besides the food they eat and the exercise they get?
Yeah, so we wouldn't necessarily call it counseling, because I don't have, the license to say that. However, I am a life coach, and coaching is about asking questions and exploring where you personally are. So yes, some people would probably say that it's a counseling type of environment, or the sessions that we have, because I don't allow you just to get away with, I'm eating Doritos late at night. The question is, well, why are we doing that? What is missing in your life right now that's causing you on a daily basis to make a poor choice. And so because of that, it gets really personal, and there are a lot of life shifts that happen. I mean, if you're unhappy in your relationship with your mother or your father or your kids or your husband for that matter, or your career is stifling your growth, it all matters as to how you feel and what you're doing. If you're not exercising, or if you're not spending time with God in a way that is significant, it all matters. So we touch on all of that in our sessions. It's not just about a list of foods or do's or don'ts.
That's good stuff. Yeah. So we have a question. Yes, and it was the question I was going to ask also. You talked about the anti-inflammatory foods that you were saying there are certain things that you would sort of advise across the board for everyone to either to take or eat or to not. So can you talk a little bit about those sort of things that we all can benefit from knowing?
Of course, of course. So everyone is different, as I said, but sugar is my number one that I tell people we need to really back away from. We have absolutely no idea how much sugar we consume because of processed foods and the way in which our palate has developed as Americans. It is really excessive. I mean, in a space where we really should only be having less than 10 teaspoons of sugar a day, we are, and I'll give you kind of a comparison, a big gulp Slurpee type soda that you might get at a 7-Eleven or Quick Stop or wherever you go has 76 grams of sugar in it. Right. So I say 80 grams of sugar, we're just going to round up a little bit, is divided by 4 is 20 teaspoons of sugar. So that's giving you about 3/4 of a cup of sugar in one gulp, so to speak, right? And in that big gulp, you have doubled what you're supposed to, and that's not included. So that's all you should have in a day times 2. And then if you eat anything else, any fruit, any carbohydrate like a cracker or a cookie or anything, I mean, it really doesn't, because everything turns into sugar that's not a protein or a fat, whether it be fruit or not. And there are high glycemic index fruits and there are low glycemic index fruits, meaning how it affects the body with sugar and your insulin. So understanding that sugar is number one inflammatory. Corn is also an inflammatory food. Wheat can be inflammatory for some people, especially many people having sensitivity, even if it's not a true allergy to gluten. Soy can be inflammatory. And then certain hydrogenated oils as well are things that we need to definitely stay away from. So I always try to tell people, the foods that are complex carbs, which are rice and quinoa and oatmeal, and they're very good carbohydrates for the body. Fresh fruits, not even the dried fruits, because that's very high in sugar. You've taken all the water out. And because of that, now you're just left with the sugar and the fiber, and you don't have the same disbursement into the cells, and how that really affects your insulin levels. So without getting too scientific on you, that's really, but protein in the form of, non-processed meats or things that people should have for sure. And then your healthy fats like your avocado and olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, pumpkin seed oil, those types of things, but staying away from vegetable oil and canola oil and those types of hydrogenated oils.
Good information. So, as you were listing all the things, I was like, okay, so what's left? Okay, I can eat quinoa, I can eat oatmeal, and I can eat rice. I'm feeling like, you're taking everything away.
Much. There's so much. The thing is that we don't realize that we can actually have, monk fruit and use that as a particular sweetener, and it has zero glycemic index, and it has 0 calorie, right? And so that is a healthier sweetener. So you can create and make your own products and things, and you have to be diligent about reading labels. But when I'm saying that, you can have all kinds of fruits, all kinds of vegetables. You can definitely have protein sources that are clean, like say grass-fed beef, organic chicken, lamb, turkey, fish. So we have been conditioned to eat foods that have been processed, but what about just having clean food. And you can make desserts. I mean, there's all kinds of desserts that I eat. Instead of eating an almond joy, I'll make something called a coconut crack bar, which is basically coconut oil, coconut shavings, and a little bit of monk fruit syrup. And you don't even have to bake it. You just mix it all together, put it in the refrigerator, and cut them into squares. And then instead of having sweetened chocolate, you put cacao on there, and you have something that tastes literally like an almond joy. If you want to put an almond shavings on there, that's a healthy keto dessert. So you don't have to be deprived. I told you I don't eat nasty food, right? And so
right.
you just have to get creative. And that's where, like I said, sometimes hiring a health coach is helpful because we can help you with ideas and understanding how to shift your lifestyle without it being overwhelming.
Yeah, I'm feeling that. Like I could imagine, and I eat fairly healthily. I'm not sure if I said that right, but I would consider myself to be a pretty healthy eater, and I do have my you said Doritos, and that is one of my weaknesses. But
but you could actually get something for that. There are other options that are healthier because they don't have the dye in them. So you could still do the corn chip without. So that's what I'm saying. Figuring out what they are, and there are different companies that make ones that are healthier options.
Okay, so that's why I need you, so you could be like guiding me through. Okay, you can't have the Doritos, but here's an option that will
that's right.
That craving.
Exactly.
Yeah. So when you're working with your clients, what would you say is how do you sort of transition them off of sugar? I know is the hard one. Like, how do you begin to help them move in the better direction? Because I know, I mean, do you just say go to cold turkey and get over it, sweat it out, or is there a way to sort of do it a little less harshly?
Well, that's where the individual coaching comes in, because every person is really different. And there are individuals who can do something cold turkey and need to because they don't do well with moderation. And then there are other individuals that are pretty good with being able to meter things out and to scale back, or what I call crowd things out with healthier options and have smaller portions of the things that are not truly beneficial for them. And then it's about educating them. So I can't give a one size fits all for that. And it's the same way as the food. You have to really know yourself. And those are the types of questions that I ask. I also created a program called Gut Check 21, which helps people kind of come away from some of those inflammatory foods. And it is a kind of a cut it off cold turkey, but the support is there that keeps you from wanting to quit. And that's one of the things that happens is when you feel like you're alone in a situation or in a process of change, you tend to throw your hands up and say, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. It's too hard. So those types of programs and community help people to stick to it and to get past what I call those first 8 days, which is really a deep think. Sugar is a drug, whether people want to admit it or not. It plays on the brain the same way that cocaine does, and the dopamine fire happens. And so the more that dopamine fire happens, you want it, keep going back to it. And so sometimes cold turkey is necessary because you're not able, someone's like telling someone, well, you can have a little crack today. It doesn't work that way. It opens up those pathways and makes you just want more. So depends.
Yeah. So we have a question about intermittent fasting. That's something you advocate for?
I love intermittent fasting. I think fasting is a beautiful thing, but I also think that there are certain population groups that have to be mindful of that practice. That would be someone who might have diabetes and type 2, teenagers, especially, that might be dealing with any kind of body issues or anorexia, bulimia, or and adults as well. But a lot of times young people, I try to steer away from that because it can create some unhealthy patterns if you don't understand the psychological side of that. And so, but besides those major, and then pregnant women or anyone trying to give birth, that type of thing, I always say we want to stay away from fasting states like that. But as far as a healthy individual that really wants to understand, anywhere from 12, everyone does a form of intermittent fasting because you go to sleep. And, we're hoping you're getting about 8 hours, and maybe you didn't eat a few hours beforehand, and a few hours after you get up, maybe you haven't had something to eat. So everyone tends to do that, but it's the intentionality of, I am only going to eat from, 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. every day, and you shorten the window of time in which you eat and lengthen the time in which your body fasts, that is such a healthy thing to do for your blood sugar levels. Number one, if you don't have an issue, like I said, with diabetes, I want to make sure that caveat is known. But also number two, it's really good for brain cognitive acumen. Basically, it's something called autophagy, where the body looks for, when it starts to get hungry and the cell starts to look for sugar, because sugar, there are only two fuel sources, sugar and fat. And when you don't give your body sugar, which in the form of fasting, it will go to the fat stores in order to supply your body with energy. And that is a pretty clean burn. It doesn't spike up and down. But that autophagy that happens, your cell is looking for, it's like going into a closet. I like to give this analogy. Go into your closet and you're looking for your second pair of shoes. And your cell is doing the same thing. If you've got one red one in your hand and you're looking for your other red pump, and you all of a sudden see some paper on the floor, so you throw that away. And then all of a sudden you see, a penny and you put that somewhere else. Well, that's what happens to the cells. They start to clean themselves up, and you start to have healthier cells when you give yourself an ability to fast. So that's kind of the quick and dirty of intermittent fasting. But I find it beneficial, and it's something that I practice daily.
I was going to ask you. So you do the intermittent fasting?
I do.
Yeah.
Yes. And I mean, it depends, anywhere from 12 to 16 hours. Some people go 18. I think that's a little, like, unless you really are skilled in that and you know what you're doing as far as getting the appropriate amount of nutrients and calories in that short window of time, I really don't usually advise my clients or people to go past 16 hours. But 16 hours to 12 hours is a great amount of time to do that.
Yeah. Okay, good stuff. I think I see another question. What vitamins and nutrients do the African Americans miss out on or don't have enough of? I don't know if you have.
Yeah. We're all biochemically unique. So I do try to make sure that that's a caveat to understand. But one of the things historically is vitamin D, which is very interesting because vitamin D comes from the sun. And, you think about being from Africa in the space of equator living and having more access to the sun, we have sheltered ourselves and have decided not to go out and enjoy sometimes getting the rays. So I know vitamin D is definitely one. The other, copper can be minimized sometimes, and copper tends to show up with gray hair. So every deficiency in our body or disease stems from a deficiency in a mineral in our body. And so sometimes we as African Americans can have a deficiency there as well. But vitamin D is probably the number one thing that I see, and an increase, unfortunately, in sugar in our community. And so that's why we tend to have a lot of type 2 diabetes. We'll also sometimes roll into heart disease and high blood pressure as well, and cholesterol numbers. So those are some of the woes. But vitamin D is and magnesium as well are two of probably the biggest minerals and vitamins that I want my clients to get, because they are responsible for so many hormones being fired and produced in the body. And so when those numbers are off, it really is a downward spiral. So, either supplementing with those things or making sure that you're eating foods that are rich in both of those areas.
Yeah, and getting out in the sun when you can. I know that the melanin in our skin also protects us from the sun's rays, which means it takes longer for us to actually absorb.
It does, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So talk a little bit about the Gut Check 21. What exactly is that? What do people do? It's 21 days, and what does that look like?
Okay. Yeah, so Gut Check 21 is what I call health coaching for life. It is a program that they're videos for, it's actually not 21 days, but 26 days, because there are a few days of learning. They're basically 6 days where you are learning a little bit about the program, what you're going to do. You start there, and then it's the 21-day practice. I perform it live 3 times a year, although you can watch the videos and do the program at any point in time. So it's evergreen in that way. But it's an elimination diet. We take certain inflammatory foods out, and we walk through the process week by week. and it's not just about food. Remember, I said we're also going to talk about the the primary food in our lives while we're addressing the secondary food so that we can see what our triggers are and where we're going. So it's really a way for people to connect in. It's a program where once you come into it, you're there, like I said, for life. So even when I do 2 live calls a week, so let's say you join in 2021 and in 2013, your doctor tells you that your cholesterol is high. Well, in a live month, you can come in and talk to me twice a week on these hour-long conference calls that I have where I answer any questions that you might have personally or about the program in general. And so I try to tell people it's like putting a lawyer on retainer. It's like putting a health coach on retainer. And as the program grows and I learn more information, I provide more information through the coaching calls and then also updating videos and information.
Oh, good stuff. Backing up a minute, you talked about copper, and she put up the question, copper? How do I get that in my diet? Where is your supply of copper coming from?
Well, I would tell people a good supplement will help. It's harder sometimes to just find that in food sources, but you can. I mean, a lot of nuts and seeds will help you with that, and then also some different types of protein. Like I said, if you start and vegetables as well. So if you are going to eat a well-balanced diet, a lot of times you can increase the amount of copper. But I always tell people a really good supplement will help you with that, and take a look on the back and see how much copper you're going to get.
Never thought about copper as something I needed to make sure was in my life.
Yes, exactly.
Learn something new every day. So we're almost out of time. So I want you to talk. I know it flies by. You talked about the Gut Check 21. What other things are you doing that you want to make sure people know about and how they can find you?
Okay, awesome. Well, I wrote a book called Share the Joy, 52 Weeks to Abundant Health. And I wrote this because my cousin passed away pretty early at age 53. And it's almost been 2 years since that happened. And he basically it was lifestyle choices. And I said, I don't want anyone to not know what they need to do based upon price or not being able to afford a health coach or getting the information they need. So this steps you through a different health practice each week. So I always tell people if there's anything that you can do is pick up that book on Amazon. It is great because there's even a resource in the back that shows you, like, I got this issue going on. What chapter should I go to? Mm-hmm. And it links all of those types of things together. So it provides you, with a litany of things that you can do to make your life healthier. I also do a program called Momentum Not Motion for women. And it goes every year from January to January. So that's something that 10 women that I kind of walk through an entire year of life coaching and health coaching. That's a great program. I am also on YouTube. I do a weekly kind of video called Share the Joy, kind of in the same vein of my book, where I'm sharing one health tip or one thing that you can do in that way. And so you can find that on Facebook and YouTube. It's a live that I do. I just have a lot of programs, but the best thing to do if you're trying to really figure out what's going on and how to connect is going to my website, which is www.doallthingswithjoy.com. So those are some of the easy ways. But if you want the most access, bang for your buck, I always say it's the book, Share the Joy, or it's going to be being a part of Gut Check 21, because those two programs, or like I said, the free option of piecing things together is also checking out those weekly videos.
Awesome. I mean, there's so much good stuff. And Do All Things with Joy. It's easy to remember, but we also put it in the chat for you guys to check out.
Thank you.
And, it's just, I'm so glad that you were able to come on and share this with us, because I think we as African American women and as women in general need to prioritize our health and really take it more seriously. And it helps so much to have someone who can come alongside you to keep you accountable and keep you on track. Because it's easy to, I know for me, it's easy to fall off. I'll start off real strong and then I'll just grab that bag of Doritos and call it a day.
Yeah. But I say when you're grabbing that bag of Doritos, and my question for you is why? Ask yourself, like before it happens, ask yourself that question. Why am I going for this? And ask yourself, is my relationship okay? Are my career, is it going all right? What? Because once you figure, because you're going to keep going for it if you don't address what the issue is or the stressor is. And so that would be something that I would challenge everyone to do.
Yeah, that's a good. That makes a lot of sense. And Ruth, you asked what the name of the book is. It's Do All Things. It's Share the Joy. Share the Joy is the
Share
name
the
of the
joy. Yep,
book. Do
52
All
weeks to
Things
abundant health.
with Joy. Yeah. So Do All Things with Joy is the site,
Website.
and Share the Joy is the title of the book. Great. And they can find it on Amazon and
They can.
all the usual places where we find books.
Yes.
That
Yes.
is fantastic. Thank you so much. This has been such good information. I feel so much smarter now. I've learned about copper and corn.
Yes, exactly. Corn definitely was used to fatten the pigs. That one, and it's actually not a God created vegetable. So just so you know that it was man made. So God didn't make corn.
Okay. I feel like we need another 15 minutes to talk about
Well,
that.
there's a chapter in the book about it. So
Read the
trust me when I
book.
tell you, you can read the book and get it for sure.
Got you.
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us, Kimberly Joy.
Yeah.
It has been a joy meeting you, and we will definitely check out all of the things that you shared with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. See you.
See ya.
Well, guys, this has been great. I hope that everyone feels empowered to take charge of your health. It's so important to do that. And I want to just go to our scripture really quick. I found three that I thought were appropriate for our discussion today. And the first one comes from Mark chapter 5, verse 34. And it says, Jesus said to the woman, "You are now well because of your faith. May God give you peace." And Psalm 147:3 says, He renews our hope and heals our bodies. And then Daniel chapter 1, verses 15 and 16 says, Daniel and his friends looked healthier and better than the young men who had been served food from the royal palace. After this, the guard let them eat vegetables instead of the rich food and wine. So each of those verses I chose for a different reason. The first one, because I feel like the connection between Jesus and the woman is so beautiful, and how he was so um, gentle with her, and how he healed her without even having to do anything. She literally touched the hem of his garment. But I feel like it's so telling for us as women that Jesus is a healer, and he wants us to be well. And the Psalms verse was that he renews our hope and heals our bodies. And then, of course, the example of Daniel and his friends who didn't partake of the king's rich food, but instead had a simple, clean diet. And in spite of that, I was joking with Kimberly that, oh my gosh, I can't eat anything. And I'm sure that's what the guard thought, right? He was like, you can't just survive on vegetables and water. You're going to look frail. But it just goes to show that God's way is the best way, and if you follow His plan, He will honor that, and He will honor us if we do the same. And we may find that I have a feeling we will find that we will be stronger and better for following the guidelines that He has given us in the Bible for healthy eating and healthy living. And He puts people like Kimberly Joy in the world to help us through those choices that we have to make for ourselves. And the goal is, and I loved the beginning when I was introducing her, I love that she is wanting people to have better health so they can fulfill their purpose and do what it is that God has meant for them to do. And in this month of Women's History, it's all about we as women doing that, fulfilling whatever it is that God has for us. And the best way we can do that is if we're taking care of ourselves and making ourselves a priority, ladies. I know that sometimes the kids are pulling on us and the husband, and we want to just kind of, put ourselves second or last, but don't do that. Take care of you, because God has a work for you to do. I cannot wait for you guys to meet the other fabulous women that we have who will be joining us in the next few weeks. Next week, we will be talking to Juliet Wise, who is a counselor and is going to talk to us about our mental health. And then we have Dr. McMillan coming the week after to talk about women's health in particular. Those of us who are approaching that menopause period, if you have questions about what's going on with your hormones, she's going to be here to help us through some of those things that we might be dealing with. And then the last week of the month, we're going to have Stacey Haynes, who is a dermatologist who specializes in Black skin care. So I'm really excited to talk to her. And as I said, all of this is to help us to be better and do the work that God has for us. And He says He wants us to have life abundantly. And that's what I wish for you too. So I thank all of you for joining me today. I'm glad that you could be here. I don't feel alone anymore. Thank you for commenting in the comments. And if you have further questions, definitely check out Do All Things with Joy and connect with Kimberly Joy so that you can speak to her about whatever it is that you want to talk to her about. Because of course, we each are individuals and have to have a very individual plan. So it's not enough just to have sort of the one size fit all thing. So take care of you. Be good to you. I love all of you, and I will see you next week. God bless.